Imagine watching a controlled demolition. Like a massive concrete skyscraper is totally rigged with explosives.
Okay.
And the charges detonate, right? The foundation cracks, and the entire structure just begins to plummet in on itself.
It's such a visceral image.
Exactly. And viscerally, when we see a complex system collapsing like that, our brains literally scream that it's a disaster.
Right, because the natural human instinct is to desperately patch the cracks.
Yeah, to like hold the roof up and view the chaos as the ultimate enemy of order. But but what if that building isn't actually being destroyed?
Wait, what do you mean?
What if mid-collapse the building is actually eating its own crumbling foundation to instantly forge itself into an even taller, indestructible tower?
I mean, that completely violates our baseline conditioning,
Right.
because we are taught from day one that systemic stress, specifically entropy,
Yeah.
that gradual or sudden decline to disorder is a terminal diagnosis.
Yeah, we view it as an ending to be avoided at all costs.
Oh, absolutely.
And then you stumble onto a piece of writing that takes that deeply ingrained fear, rips it up, and claims that systemic collapse isn't the end of a system at all.
Far from it.
It is the absolute prerequisite for its ultimate evolution. So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at a brand new, incredibly dense, and honestly mind-bending publication that dropped literally today, March 16th, 2026, in Bibebibebibe Magazine, issue U77.
Yeah, penned by Dr. Melvin Sewell. He's the academic dean and diagnostic architect at the Cosmic University of Echo Rift Studies 9X.
Quite the title. And I want to set the tone for you listening right away. The vocabulary in this text, it reads like top-tier, high-concept science fiction.
Oh, for sure. It's wild.
But Dr. Sewell explicitly warns the reader that this is a functional diagnostic infrastructure for a multiversal system.
Right. It's not fiction to him.
Not at all. And our mission today is to explore his radical thesis that intense systemic stress, chaos, and even total structural collapse, they are not threats. They are tools.
Potential tools, really.
Yeah. We are exploring what he has mapped out as the sovereign reality curve. Okay, let's unpack this, because before we can even begin to chart this curve, we have to completely rethink our relationship with the fuel that powers the entire engine.
And that fuel is entropy itself.
Exactly.
So Dr. Sewell frames this paradigm shift through what he calls the monster Ph.D. framework.
I love that name.
Right. It's catchy. But the core premise is that we must stop treating entropy as an adversary or like a disease.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, the monster Ph.D. model treats entropy purely as a curriculum. It is a highly aggressive educational mechanism.
Which is such a wild reframing. As I was reading through this framework, I couldn't stop thinking about it like a forced evolutionary workout.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Because think about the physiological mechanism of building muscle, right? You don't actually get stronger while you're lifting the weight.
You're actually breaking things down.
Exactly. You are actively destroying tissue. You're subjecting your body to a high magnitude stress event that literally causes micro tears in your muscle fibers.
It's a localized collapse.
Yes. But that specific biological tearing is the exact signal that forces the body to synthesize new proteins, to rebuild the structure denser than before.
Right. And Sewell is arguing that macroscopic systems have to undergo that exact same tearing process to produce what he calls coherence peaks.
Coherence peaks.
Yeah, and adaptive complexity.
Right.
The biomechanical analogy holds up really well here because it highlights the sheer necessity of the damage.
Without the damage, there's no growth.
Right. Systems that survive these high-magnitude stress events, they don't just return to their baseline state. They undergo forced refinement.
Their measurable reality level physically elevates.
Exactly. And Dr. Sewell doesn't just leave this in the abstract, which I appreciate. He provides macro-scale precedents in the text.
Yeah, he gets very specific.
He utilizes historical, national-scale entities strictly as clinical data points to demonstrate this curriculum in action.
Right. He basically places these massive global systems under his diagnostic microscope to see who actually passed the class.
Yeah, and to be clear, he does this very neutrally. So he points specifically to System V, which correlates to historical Vietnam, and System C correlating to China. And in his diagnostic architecture, these are prime examples of systems passing the entropy curriculum.
Meaning they survived the muscle tear?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They absorbed immense existential systemic stress and utilized that kinetic energy for extreme refinement.
Wow.
But then on the other end of the spectrum, he categorizes System RU, correlating to Russia, as highly volatile.
Volatile how?
Like, it's a system still violently churning through the turbulence of the curriculum without having reached a coherence peak yet.
Ah, got it.
And then System SU, the Soviet Union, is mapped as a system that hit its threshold and fully collapsed during what Sewell terms its final refinement exam.
Ouch. And I want to pause here and make something very clear for you listening. The text uses these national systems strictly as clinical, completely neutral data points.
Yes, very important to note.
There is no political endorsement or critique happening in Sewell's work. We are just reporting on his framework. It is purely an exercise in measuring systemic stress and mapping out reality-level jumps.
Absolutely. It's a clinical diagnosis.
Right. But seeing those massive systems treated as mere data points, it brings up a glaring question for me.
Which is?
Well, if entropy is a curriculum, and we're evaluating the stress levels of entire nations or, like, multiversal bodies, how do you actually grade the test? Wait, how do you put a math equation on reality itself?
And that is the exact ambition of his SMI Portal Algebra.
Okay, I was hoping you'd explain this part.
Yeah, so Dr. Sewell formalizes reality not as a static physical environment, but as a dynamic oscillatory field.
Okay.
He basically suggests that reality is essentially humming, it's vibrating at specific, measurable frequencies.
Look, I'm going to need you to ground this SMI Portal Algebra for us because staring at the equations in the text almost gave me a migraine.
It is dense. I'll give you that.
We are trying to quantify chaos here. How do the actual variables interact?
Let's isolate the mechanisms. The foundational variable is RLT, which stands for reality level over time.
Reality level over time. Got it.
Think of this as the system's baseline structural integrity as it moves through time. Now, against that integrity, you apply omega.
The Greek letter.
Yes, omega, which represents the oscillation frequency. Omega measures how violently the system is fluctuating due to external stress.
So if the system is like a suspension bridge, omega is the hurricane force wind just shaking the cables.
That's a perfect analogy, yes.
But, every bridge has a breaking point.
Exactly. Which brings us to C, the collapse threshold.
The breaking point.
Right. This is the mathematical limit. If the oscillation frequency of omega exceeds the value of C, the structure fragments, it fails.
Okay.
But, and this is key, a system isn't defenseless. It possesses sigma, the SH1 stabilization coefficient. Yeah. What's fascinating here is that this algebra isn't just theory. It actively predicts outcomes. Because sigma doesn't just block the wind.
What does it do?
It represents the system's internal ability to dynamically redistribute the kinetic energy of that stress.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it alters the tension of the bridge in real time to absorb the oscillation. And finally, you have phi, the resonance factor.
And what's phi?
It determines how well the system harmonizes with the baseline multiverse around it.
So the algebra is basically calculating a race.
Essentially, yes.
It's measuring whether the stabilization coefficient, sigma, can absorb and redistribute the chaos fast enough to keep the oscillation from shattering the collapse threshold, C.
Precisely. And the algebra actively models this trajectory.
That's wild.
By crunching these variables, the SMI Portal Algebra predicts if a system will fracture under the entropy, if it will merely stabilize and stagnate,
or if it will fundamentally refine.
Exactly. And this is where the sovereign reality curve emerges. The curve is the mathematical asymptote.
The highest possible path.
Right. It is the absolute highest velocity trajectory that this algebra can model. It is the blueprint of a system that doesn't just survive the math, but totally masters it.
Okay, so we understand the fuel now, the entropy curriculum. And we have the mathematical engine, the algebra, to measure it. Let's look at what actually happens when a system accelerates so fast that it locks into this sovereign reality curve.
The ascent begins.
Yeah, we start climbing Dr. Sewell's 8-phase developmental cosmology.
Right, so phase 1 is defined simply as the catalyst.
The spark.
Yes, this is the initial impact event. It is the moment the entropy curriculum begins, pushing the system's oscillation frequency violently upward, forcing an immediate reaction.
Basically, the moment the heavy weight is lifted and the muscle fibers begin to tear.
Exactly. Which propels the system directly into phase 2, which is called sovereignty.
Sovereignty.
Yes. This is the crucible. Because as the system begins to refine itself, the surrounding multiversal environment, which Sewell calls the rift.
Rift, right.
The rift deploys diagnostic stressors to test the integrity of this emerging sovereign structure.
See, this was the most compelling part of the text for me.
Oh, the adversary.
Yeah. When I was reading about these phase 2 adversaries, I realized they function identically to a biological immune system.
Oh, totally.
Like, if the multiverse is a living body and this newly ascending sovereign system is a sudden anomaly, the multiverse basically sends out antibodies to attack it and see if it truly belongs.
That's a really good way to frame it.
And Sewell names 4 specific adversary archetypes, right? You've got collapse vector entities, narrative parasites, entropy mirrors, and sovereign imposters.
They are highly specialized stressors, like narrative parasites, for instance. They are entities designed to latch on to an emerging timeline and siphon away its coherence.
Straining it.
Right, draining that RLT variable we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
And then sovereign imposters act as deceptive algorithmic traps.
Traps.
Yeah, they offer false paths of refinement that actually loop the system back into a collapsed trajectory.
Man, so if you are a system on the sovereign curve and you have these multiversal viruses attaching to your timeline, how do you fight them off? I mean, you can't just put up a shield forever.
Well, you don't use a shield at all.
No shield.
No. A system on this curve engages in a mechanism Dr. Sewell calls collapse inversion.
Okay, how does a system invert a collapse? I'm trying to picture the mechanics of that.
Think about how a martial artist uses an opponent's momentum.
Okay.
Or, to stick to your biological metaphor, think about how certain T cells in the human immune system operate.
Right. They attack the virus.
But they don't just act as a physical wall bouncing viruses away. They actively consume the pathogen. They dismantle its RNA, memorize its structural frequency, and use that data to upgrade the body's future defenses.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, collapse inversion is the multiversal equivalent of that. When a narrative parasite attacks, the sovereign system absorbs the parasite's kinetic energy.
It eats it.
Yes, it intentionally reverses its phase frequency and completely dissolves the parasitic structure.
It quite literally eats the multiversal virus to add to its own mass.
Exactly.
It uses the attack as raw material to push its reality level even higher. That is incredibly aggressive.
It has to be. Because surviving phase 2 is what allows the system to generate phase 3, which is the sovereign field.
The field, okay.
Right. Up until this point, the system has been fighting for its own internal survival. But in phase 3, its mass and coherence become so dense that its influence ceases to be local.
It starts expanding.
It begins projecting an oscillatory field outward, creating measurable interference patterns in the reality surrounding it.
And the text details 3 distinct types of interference patterns hitting the surrounding timelines, right?
Yes.
There's stabilizing interference, where fragile, chaotic timelines nearby suddenly gain structural integrity just by being in the system's proximity.
Right, they get stronger just by being close.
Then there's destabilizing interference, which is the exact opposite. Like, if a nearby timeline is contradictory or parasitic, the sovereign field's frequency is so intense that the incompatible timeline just shatters under the pressure.
It just crushes them.
And finally, resonant interference, where compatible timelines naturally sync up and harmonize with the sovereign's frequency.
The sovereign system is essentially tuning the instruments of the surrounding reality to match its own pitch.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, and where I honestly found myself pushing back on the text quite a bit.
Why is that?
Because once you are projecting this field and you start gravitationally reshaping the timelines around you, the leap into the next few phases, phase 4, phase V, and phase V, it starts sounding less like an advanced diagnostic model and more like a localized cheat code for existence. I mean, are we seriously talking about a system just bending the laws of cause and effect?
I totally understand the resistance to that idea. I really do.
Yeah.
But within Sewell's framework, it is a strict mechanical progression. It is not about cheating the laws of physics. It is about the system accumulating so much structural density that it evolves into the infrastructure that literally generates the physics.
It becomes the rules.
Exactly. Let's trace the momentum. When your field becomes that gravitational, you hit phase 4, the resonant axis.
The axis, right.
Surrounding timelines don't just feel your interference anymore. They physically reorganize their trajectories around you.
So you become the sun, and the surrounding timelines become the planets caught in your orbit.
Precisely.
And the text notes that harmonic timelines fully align with your axis, while timelines destined for collapse just dissolve and feed into your gravity well.
Right, but eventually a star pulls in all the available dust and debris in its vicinity.
It runs out of fuel.
Yes, it goes out of external raw material. And this necessitates the shift into phase V, the sovereign continuum.
The continuum.
Yeah, the sovereign system can no longer just reorganize existing reality. It becomes a continuum generator. It begins exuding its own timeline shells.
It literally manufactures reality.
It does.
It creates sovereign-aligned timelines parallel resonant timelines, and anti-resonant shells that exist purely to absorb stray entropy and immediately collapse, just keeping the core system safe.
Which brings us directly to your pushback regarding cause and effect.
Yes, the cheat codes.
Right. Because once a system is actively generating the timeline shells in which reality unfolds, linear time stops applying to it.
Wow.
The system breaches phase 6, trans-causal sovereignty.
Trans-causal.
Yeah, the system's unique oscillation signature ceases to be a measurement and becomes a literal foundational law of motion for that sector of the multiverse.
And the text breaks this trans-causal mastery into 3 domains, right? Precausal, metacausal, and supercausal.
Yes, the 3 domains.
I was trying to wrap my head around this without using the cliche metaphor of time being a river.
It's tough not to use that one.
So if we think about causality like a massive, complex software program, baseline reality is being a character inside the video game, forced to obey the collision detection and the gravity coded into the engine.
That's a fitting analogy. So if we map Sewell's domains to that, operating in the metacausal domain means you have access to the developer console.
You're outside the character.
Exactly. You can pause the simulation, observe the entire architecture of the software, and rewrite the variables of the timeline while it actually runs.
And the precausal domain.
Precausal means you are operating in the integrated development environment before the code is even compiled.
Oh, man.
You are writing the foundational logic that will eventually dictate what the characters in the simulation experience as destiny or like random chance.
Actually, supercausal.
Right. Supercausal means you are the electricity powering the server hardware. You invented the concept of computation.
That is heavy.
Causality itself bends in whatever direction is required to maintain the sovereign's coherence. The symptom can become the cure.
Wait, how so?
Like an attack in the present can be rewritten so that it retroactively fortified the system in the past.
But hold on. If a sovereign system is dictating the timeline from the server level, what happens to the free will or the autonomy of the surrounding systems caught in that software?
Yeah.
Doesn't this just become a multiversal dictatorship?
Well, clinically speaking, the diagnostic architecture does not concern itself with the philosophical autonomy of lesser systems.
It doesn't care.
In phase 6, the surrounding timelines simply become mathematical expressions of the sovereign's gravity. It is physics, not ethics.
Physics, not ethics.
A boulder rolling down a hill does not ask the grass for permission to crush it.
Wow.
The sovereign system's coherence becomes the overriding imperative of that local multiverse.
So what does this all mean? I mean, really, if a system transcends causality to the point where its mere existence dictates the flow of time, it isn't a nation state anymore.
No, not at all.
It isn't a culture or a localized structure. It has transcended physical reality entirely.
It has. It enters phase 7. Mythic ascension.
Mythic ascension.
Yeah, this is the threshold where Sewell's diagnostic vocabulary brilliantly bridges the gap between quantum mechanics and narrative theory. The system becomes a mythic invariant.
Meaning its specific refinement pattern is so deeply burned into the source code of reality that echoes of it start appearing everywhere, completely independent of linear travel.
Yes. We see this in evolutionary biology as convergent evolution.
Like the crabs.
Exactly like the crabs. The biological blueprint for a crab has independently evolved multiple separate times in Earth's history because the physical shape is an optimal solution to the environment.
It's just the best design.
Right. In phase 7, meaning becomes physics. The multiverse treats the sovereign archetype as the ultimate evolutionary solution to entropy.
So a completely isolated civilization light years away in a universe that has never interacted with the original sovereign system.
Yeah.
They will suddenly start building architectural structures or writing mythologies that perfectly mirror this sovereign's refinement curve.
Precisely. Because the sovereign system fundamentally altered the underlying probability matrix of the multiverse.
It changed the math.
It laid down a trans-narrative anchor, which sets the stage for the final culmination of the entire curve.
We're finally there.
Phase 8, the eternal return.
The top of the cosmology ladder.
Yep. If we connect this to the bigger picture, in phase 8, the archetype achieves total self-renewal. Remember how we started this discussion?
With the monster Ph.D. framework demanding that entropy is a curriculum.
Exactly. The constant introduction of systemic stress. In phase 8, whenever that entropy rises anywhere in the multiverse, whenever the curriculum demands a massive solution to extreme systemic stress, reality itself will automatically recreate the sovereign pattern to solve it.
Wait, really? The multiverse just organically generates your archetype from scratch?
Yes. You might manifest as a stabilizing force, a radical symbol, or a structural anomaly, but you always return to balance the equation.
That is mind-blowing.
And the text takes great care to emphasize that this final phase is not about achieving dominance or conquest over the multiverse.
It's not about being the boss.
No, it is about achieving structural inevitability.
Structural inevitability.
Yes. The system has been so perfectly refined by the fires of phase I and II that reality fundamentally cannot function without recreating your blueprint when threatened.
Man, this entire cosmological map is just staggering when you zoom out.
It really puts things in perspective.
It does. I mean, we started all the way down at the baseline looking at standard systems like V, C, and the volatile RU, just struggling to pass the monster Ph.D. curriculum.
Normal systems just trying to manage their oscillation against their collapse thresholds.
Right. But the sovereign reality curve isn't just about managing stress. It's a completely different classification.
Totally.
A sovereign class trajectory accelerates directly into the entropy, eats the multiversal viruses, bends causality to its will, and eventually becomes the very mythic infrastructure of reality itself.
It forces a total reevaluation of how we view turbulence and decay.
Yeah.
And while Dr. Sewell maps this on a multiversal macroscopic scale, the diagnostic architecture scales perfectly down to the localized personal level.
Which is where it hits home.
Right. It invites you, listening right now, to audit your own reality.
Yeah.
Like, what are the narrative parasites currently draining your daily coherence?
Exactly. If entropy is nothing more than an aggressive curriculum and a collapse is just a raw kinetic resource waiting to be inverted for your own refinement.
Then what is it teaching you?
Yeah. What is the collapse threshold in your own life currently trying to force you to learn? Are you just frantically patching the drywall to survive the storm, or are you preparing to invert that stress and start your own ascent?
That's the real question.
But it leaves me with one final lingering thought that Dr. Sewell's text hints at but never fully resolves.
Oh, what's that?
Well, if reaching phase 8 means becoming structurally inevitable, if reality automatically generates your exact sovereign archetype whenever entropy peaks, what happens when two completely different systems achieve phase 8?
Oh, wow.
Right. What happens when the multiverse generates two conflicting, perfect solutions to the same problem?
That's a terrifying thought.
Do their trans-causal fields seamlessly merge into a new metastructure, or does the friction between two completely inevitable forces finally cause the underlying code of reality itself to crack?
I guess we don't have the math for that yet.
Not yet. But definitely something to mull over the next time you feel your own foundations start to shake.